Hey there, my name's John. This is In Air Outdoors, and I understand some of you are new to camping and maybe went on a trip recently and were a little colder than you would like when you sleep. Camping is different than sleeping inside. It just is. There's different things to consider, different ways to be comfortable. So let's talk about that. As you can see, I have collected a large amount of stuff over my 35 plus years of camping and backpacking. And I've learned a lot from that time, and hopefully I can share some of that with you. So let's get started. So, when we talk about camping outside, when we talk about sleeping outside, we're trying to combat ways of losing heat. And there's three terms that relate to that from, I don't know, high school physics. Convection, so air blowing over you; conduction, so touching something, specifically the ground; and then less so radiation. That's like the warmth you feel off of hot coals. So again, we're building a system to combat that. It's not as simple as I just need a warmer sleeping bag or I want a different sleeping pad. So any system components are going to be pretty similar. You're going to have your sleeping pad. Now the pad is for warmth. It's actually not so much for comfort. The warmth, the insulation from the ground, that conductive heat loss is what we're trying to combat. And that's the first thing you need to think about while you're building up your sleeping system. Now, there's lots of different options. We'll get into those in a minute. The next thing, what surrounds you, this reduces the convection, the air loss temperature. That's your sleeping bag itself. And then the last thing that's in my system is some sort of clothing. So you don't want to be wearing what you had on for the day. It's moist. Moisture loses heat. It allows you to conduct heat better. We don't want that. We want to reduce that. So I always have a fresh change of something. If it's in the summer months, it's just a change of underwear, maybe a t-shirt. In the winter months, long underwear, warm fuzzy socks, and I'll probably have a beanie as well. So let's talk about the first layer to this system, and that's going to be your sleeping pad. Again, the importance of the sleeping pad is less about comfort. It's still important, but more about warmth. The ground is going to be one of your biggest ways you lose heat when sleeping outside. So, getting off of that ground, putting some sort of insulative layer between you and the ground is going to be super important. Now, you may say, well, I've got a sleeping bag under me. Not really. Sleeping bags are super squishy, so they spring up, providing loft, which provides insulation. But as soon as you compress that, it loses the insulative property. So the sleeping bag below you actually isn't going to keep you warm. Some manufacturers have realized this and adapted their sleeping systems around that, and I'll talk about that later. So the important thing you need to keep in mind is what's called an R value. So these are actually a similar R value as insulation in your attic. And you can judge how warm this sleeping pad is going to be based on that R value. It is actually a measured value, so it's something that is quantified rather than some other things in the sleeping bag world. For instance, this REI has an R value of 3.7. So I would recommend, at least in our area, 2 plus, unless you're a cold sleeper, in which case I'd go higher. Um, I think the ridge rest is around 2. The Z rest over there is maybe 1.5. Those would be fine to start off. You can always add to them. And one of the nice things about this type of sleeping pad is that it's super durable and you can always use it later on to add warmth to your other pads. Now you see, I've got 4 different types of sleeping pads laid out here. The top one is open cell foam. It's pretty inexpensive. This is actually just a mattress topper cut in half. Um, but it gets soggy when it's wet. It absorbs moisture. It's a sponge, and that's detrimental to your ability to stay warm. Then you have closed cell foam. This is a Thermarest Ridge Rest. This design has been around forever. This, I think, is actually 20 or 30 years old in and of itself. Super durable, very good at insulating for its weight, not the most comfortable. But it's a really good option. I still have a different one of these from when I was a scout that I actually cut up because I stopped using it to use as a sit pad. Below this, you'll see this is what's called a self-inflating air mattress. So what it is it's this type of foam, but encased in a nylon shell that holds air. and it allows the foam to spring open, providing that warmth and that comfort, but provides a moisture barrier. This is actually a really, really good option um, for most people when they're starting out. It's durable, it's fairly lightweight, and depending on what you get, you can get something that's really comfortable. In a few minutes, I'll show you all the ones I've got. And the last one is a true air pad. Now, this isn't again like the air mattress you have at home when your cousins come over to sleep. This actually has baffles in between it, and it is insulated with similar material as a sleeping bag. So it has Primaloft, which is a synthetic fiber, and that traps that heat. Okay. There are other types of these. Some of them use a foil layer that actually acts as a radiant barrier, but just know that when you're looking for a air mattress for camping, you're looking for something that is insulated. But we'll go over those in a minute. These are the closed cell foam options I've got. I've got them in different widths, different lengths, different styles. And this is a really good starter pad. It's super durable. It's great for a scout maybe that isn't going to take the best care of their gear. You can throw them around. The care for them is basically just make sure they're not torn. They're inexpensive. And again, they're still useful as you grow. So if you go on a super cold weather camping trip and you're a older scout, you can put your sleeping pad, your other sleeping pad right on top of these, and this will add additional warmth. So our values stack, which is pretty cool. So these are the self-inflating sleeping pads that I have, and they're a good example of what you'll see on the market. You'll see there's two vastly different sizes here. The ones on the left are my car camping sleeping pads. They're big, they're thick, they're super comfy, they're super warm. The ones on my right, not as much. They're thinner, but they're a lot lighter, a lot more compact. That's for backpacking. So this one right here is a Nemo Roamer. They make a lot of different similar options. REI makes one, Xped makes one. It is fantastically comfortable. It's 4+ inches thick, 30 inches wide, 80 inches long. It's half the size of a queen bed. I actually have two and can combine them into a queen bed. Packs down fairly compact for what it is. That's one of the big benefits for the Nemo one, but still pretty big, super heavy. You're not going to take this backpacking. So if your plans and your limited funds are that eventually you want to go backpacking, you have an older Cub Scout that the next stop's the troop, maybe better to avoid this at this point or purchase sparingly. I've also got this one. It's a more traditional uh, sleeping pad in that it's not this separated rectangular layer. It's 3.5 inches thick, 25 inches wide, 72 inches long, still pretty big, pretty heavy, not something you're going to take backpacking, but a great option for car camping. On the right, you'll see these are both Thermarest. Thermarest is kind of the originator of this style of sleeping pad. I've got two different options. They're both 20 inches wide. That's what you're going to find at the start for most backpacking sleeping pads. I prefer something wider because I'm wider shouldered. These are an inch, inch and a half in height. Um, the orange one is what's called a mummy, so it tapers at the end. And you can see it folds down a lot smaller. It's a lot lighter for both of these. This might be something you'd stick on the outside of your pack while backpacking. This would stuff in the inside. But these are a great starter place. Now, REI is starting to make their own. Other companies other than Thermarest and Nemo make them. This would be where I would recommend most people look pretty hard for their first sleeping pad. It's going to be durable enough. It still has some warmth if, let's say, the cover gets punctured by your Scout, and it's going to last a long time. The orange one on the right is actually from when I was a youth in Scouts. So that is 25 years old, and it still works fine. My kids use it. Next up, I've got my actual straight up air mattresses. So these are all insulated in some way, shape, or form. Either the red ones at the bottom has synthetic sleeping bag insulation in those air chambers to prevent air motion, keep you warm. This top one, I think, has a foil. Not certain what this one has. Now, these are not self-inflating, so you're gonna have to pump these up when you get to camp. And you can blow straight in here. It is a little bit time consuming. A lot of the manufacturers have come up with pump bags. Now, ounce for ounce, these are going to be your most comfortable, most warm sleeping pad. And you can find some pretty good values. REI makes one. This is the Flash. It's a R value 3.7. That's this top one. The Sea to Summit, I think it has an R value of about 3. I think this one's an R value of 4. This one's an R value of 2.5. They don't get affected by moisture. That's a super positive. And again, they're really small. This is what you would take in your backpack if you're backpacking, even compared to the smallest self-inflating. They're also lighter. The downsides are kind of twofold. One is you got to blow them up. They don't self-inflate like this one does by just opening this and giving it time to loft up. And then they have no insulative properties if they're damaged. So if you get a puncture in here, you got to be able to patch it. For that reason, I really wouldn't recommend this for most scouts, at least at first. Maybe when they're older and you really get into backpacking and the weight really matters, it might be an option for an older scout, Scouts BSA. But for cubs, I wouldn't recommend this for your actual scout. Now, for you as a parent or a adult guardian, this may be a good option if you're careful with your stuff and you know where you want to go. You can, buy once, cry once. This is 4 inches thick. This is 4 inches thick. They're super comfy, even for me, who's a side sleeper. It's enough. It's super warm. And I can use this for car camping. I mean, there's nothing to say that the backpacking stuff doesn't work for car camping, but there's a lot to say that the car camping stuff doesn't work for backpacking. So again, for adults, this might be a good option. For scouts, I would stick with one of the self-inflatings for the durability. So long story short, when it comes to sleeping pads, you're looking for warmth and comfort. Your home air mattress isn't going to cut it. It doesn't provide that warmth. There's a lot of options to choose from. And you need to decide pretty soon on, like, where do you want to go with your outdoor adventures? If you want to stick to car camping, hey, invest in one of these. It's fantastic. If you're interested in backpacking, look at one of the thinner self-inflatings, or if you're pretty gentle on stuff, look at one of the air mattresses. And if you're just trying to save money, want to get out and just stay warm, I could always recommend one of the closed cell foam. They're still useful even as your career progresses. One of these layers under one of these, which adds a lot of warmth to your sleep system. If you thought that the sleeping pads had a lot of things to consider, just wait. Sleeping bags are next. Now, the purpose of a sleeping bag is to reduce that convection loss of heat, is to trap air up against your body so your body can heat it up. Now, they're rated, they have a temperature rating. So somewhere on the bag or the stuff sack it comes in is going to be some sort of number. Don't believe it. All right. These are a number that is generated somehow. I don't know. And what it's representing is the absolute bare minimum. So Nemo, this is a Nemo bag. If you look here, they're a little bit better about this. They have a comfort rating, so that's where you're going to be fairly comfortable down to, and then the actual rating of the sleeping bag, which is the limit. And that's going to be, you're probably going to be shivering, but you'll make it through the night. So my rule of thumb is take whatever numbers on that bag and add about 20 to it, 15 to 20, maybe 10 if you're a really warm sleeper. And that'll give you a good idea of what you're going to be comfortable down to. Now, there are ways to expand on that comfort level, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But definitely add 10 to 20. If you're someone who sleeps cold and just can't get warm, add 20 to it. If you're someone who is very warm natured and always throwing the blankets off, add 10. And there are things you can do to add on to that. Now, these ratings are also a little bit deceptive in that when they are judged, it's based on this sleeping bag being all bundled up. So if you notice now, big hole here, it's really rated with this scrunched down tight, your body nice and tight on it. And there's some other things with how they decide their ratings that can over exaggerate things. Now, the first thing that you need to decide on is that temperature range. For our area, a 20-degree sleeping bag actually is going to work for most people. Can add to it with other ways to make it warmer, but 20 degrees is a good start. 15 to 20, maybe if you're a really cold sleeper, a 10 degree. The next thing you need to decide on is what kind of material it's made out of. So, sleeping bags are designed to keep you warm by being fluffy. It's called loft. And there's a couple different ways of achieving that. So there's a synthetic option. There's lots of synthetic options. That's what this particular Nemo bag is. And then there is down. And that's what this particular Nemo bag is. Now, down traditionally was a lot lighter, a lot more expensive. The prices have come down for some of it. And then the other big thing about down that makes me not really recommend it for scouts is that if it gets wet, even with these really well treated downs, it isn't going to provide the warmth you need. So, knowing scouts aren't necessarily the best stewards of their own gear, I'm 100% behind getting your scout some sort of synthetic sleeping bag. So, like this one here. It's a 20-degree synthetic sleeping bag. Now, for you adults, people you know they're going to be around for a while, you're going to take care of your gear, a down might be a good option. It adds a lot of warmth without any additional weight. In fact, it's usually a lot lighter. So these two sleeping bags are very, very similar, but this one probably weighs a pound less than that one. Um, Down also kind of self-regulates in a sense, in that if it's really hot out, it's not going to provide as much warmth as when it's really cold out. And then over the past decade or two, they've really added a lot of features to the down itself. They've developed coatings that have made it more water resistance so that it's less of a concern if it gets wet. So, as I said, the temperature in sleeping bags is determined by the loft. These are all three down sleeping bags. They have different fill quality, which we'll talk about in a minute, but there are different lofts based on their temperature rating. So, this is a 30-degree limit, so about 40 comfort. This is a 15-degree limit, so probably about 25 comfort. And then this is a 0-degree sleeping bag, a lot higher than the others, and it's probably going to be really comfortable down to about 10 degrees. And once you've decided on the temperature you're looking at and the material you're looking at, the next thing to do is decide on the shape. This is a standard rectangular sleeping bag. You're not going to find many of these except for car camping, maybe at Dick's Sporting Goods, because they're not the most efficient. You've got a lot of space to fill up, warm up. So remember, you're producing the heat, so you've got to fill up all this extra space in different spots with your body heat. And then a lot of heat can be lost through this top section. Manufacturers realize this, and what you'll probably recognize most is their answer, what's called a mummy bag. So a lot more trim. So you've got narrowing through the legs, you're not warming up as much space there. You've got a nice hood that goes over your head, helps keep your head warm. And then you've got a cinchable opening so you can minimize loss through here. This is an REI brand. This thing's about 20 years old. It is a down sleeping bag. And just to give you an idea, it's held up well. So buying good quality equipment can last you decades. This is my wife's sleeping bag, and it is just absolutely fantastic. It's a 15-degree rating. They do not make it anymore, but it is super comfortable, super warm. Now, some of you, like me, may not really like sleeping on your back like a mummy. There are two manufacturers that have tried to address this in two different ways. Nemo has what's called their spoon bag. So if you notice, it's a little trim here and widens out where your knees are. You still have a good hood. I like that you have this collar that you can tuck in. And then Big Agnes has come up with a product called the Sidewinder. What they've done is basically turn the sleeping bag on its side. So it looks a little weird here. It's shaped kind of like a mummy, but it's actually designed to be slept on your side. So the hood opening comes out to the side. Other things you can do to minimize some of that loss is wear a hat or a fluffy down top. I want to talk about two more things in the sleeping bag world that I think it's important to be aware of because it may be something that interests you going forwards. So I'm a big hammock camper, and when I started off with that, sleeping bags don't work really well. Most people who hammock camp end up using a quilt. This is a top quilt. So it's an extra wide quilt, and you can still use this ground camping. So remember, just like your sleeping bag, everything under you is compressed. It doesn't provide any warmth. So you really technically don't need anything there. And we're going to talk about what some other manufacturers have done in a minute with that. So you can use this top quilt on the ground, and all you're going to do is tuck it under you. They're really nice because they give you options. So, for instance, if it's really hot, you undo the legs and just drape it over you. If it's really cold, you can button up those legs and have almost like a mummy bag. There is no hood on these. That is a downside. There's some ways around that. I've got some really fluffy beanies. I've actually got like a down hood that I can wear with one of these if it's really cold. It's also really nice in that if you need additional warmth with the rest of your sleep system, you got your mummy bag, your ground camping, you can put this on top of you. This one is made by a company called Loco Libre Gear, and a lot of these started off as what's called cottage manufacturers. So local guys and girls that didn't find something they needed, so they made it themselves. Another really good one is Hammock Gear. They make one. And then a lot of the manufacturers are also coming out with these. So Sierra Designs has some. Thermarest, I believe, have some. REI has their own brand. I have found these incredibly useful for car camping, for actual just like trips places. You go to a hotel and they don't have a down comforter and you get cold, you pull this out, it packs down nice and small. They can be expensive. That's the downside. Most of them are down. There are some other people that make ones. I think Arrowhead Equipment makes one that isn't down and is pretty reasonable in price. Um, and they're really good for stomach sleepers too, because you don't have that whole bag to toss and turn and get caught up under you and get caught up under your face. Now, I do want to talk about one more concept that some manufacturers are doing. Big Agnes is the originator of this. So, Big Agnes started about 25 years ago, and their whole thing was, hey, this is a true sleep system. We need to be designing things from the ground up to keep people warm. And they continue to do so. They do make standard sleeping bags or semi-standard, like the Sidewinder, but they're really well known for their sleep system. So I have a Big Agnes pad right here. I'm going to show you what I mean by that, because they make this type of equipment for a lot of different scenarios. They make it mummy style. They make it like this style. They also have some systems that allow you to increase the temperature. So what it is you've got your sleeping pad, that is your base, and then their bags are made to attach to the sleeping pad. They do it in a couple different ways. This one uses rope and some big panels. This is a pretty light one. They have a slightly heavier one that's a lot less expensive, and it's their Lost Ranger line. And what it is it's a large rectangular bag, zippered on one side. And the rectangular bag is really good for summer camping. 50 degrees, so 60. You probably could go down to 50. It's pretty thick. All your insulation, there's no down under you. So the insulation against the ground is all by that sleeping pad. So again, that system concept. And then the second component of this, which can be used on its own to about 35 degrees, is this inner bag. And this is one of their Sidewinder style bags. So you sleep on your side if you want. You can sleep on your back. It's not as big a deal with this. And then when you combine them together, so one inside the other, you've got a 15-degree system. You've got that loft you need. And this is their Lost Ranger. But the idea behind this is it's a system. The sleeping pad is integrated with and designed around the sleeping bag system. And you can get them just a standard mummy in the same way. And I really like this system. I really like the concept of the integration, not having to carry around the extra insulation under you. And for some people who toss around at night a lot, this is a great option because the sleeping pad's going to stay the same spot. If you're going to roll inside your sleeping bag, it works great. If you're one of those people that takes the blankets and grabs onto it and flops over, I would avoid one of these because you're going to do the same thing with your sleeping bag. Now, REI, Big Agnes, and this is a Nemo bag. I'll make children's bags. Now, the children's bags are kind of cool in some ways. They might not be something you need unless you're starting off super young, in that most of them have some sort of feature that allows you to reduce the volume. So I've gone from having to fill up this whole bag with body and warmth to now just filling up this part. And then as your child grows, this expands and you get a couple more years out of sleeping bag use. This is a 20-degree Nemo. Again, REI makes one, Big Agnes makes one, and it may be a good option, especially if you're starting off with really young kids that are going to have a lot of space to grow. For your older scouts, Weeblos, we're starting to get near adult height or reasonably close, then it might be a better option just to go with a standard sleeping bag. And what you do is you can either bundle it up yourself with a hair tie or a piece of rope. Make sure to take it off when you get home to let that continue to loft, or you can always fold it under and just shorten it like that. And then my last kind of outlayer sleeping bag, this is a pure car camping sleeping bag. It actually works really well for visitors. Is I have a Nemo Jazz. It's designed to go with that Roamer sleeping pad, that super thick one I showed you earlier. And it's basically half of a queen. This one's rated down to 20. I've slept in it comfortably down to about 30, even though it is kind of more of a rectangular sleeping bag. They've added extra fill, extra loft, which kind of helps a lot with that because weight isn't an issue. It doesn't actually even stuff down into a stuff sack. It comes with this duffel bag you put it in. I think these are on sale or something similar with REI right now. When you're viewing this video, the information may not be current as to what manufacturer offers what, but right now, I don't have a specific recommendation. We'll look in REI a little bit in a few minutes and just talk about what they offer and what might be a good choice now. But I can tell you what my kids have. Okay. So both of my kids have a Nemo sleeping bag. My son has a Rift. It's a little big on him, and that's actually detrimental to his warmth. My daughter has the kids version. She sleeps perfectly fine in the same weather. My son is a cold natured sleeper, though. So we're going to be working on that with him. We may downsize him to a 10-degree sleeping bag. Even though those are both 20, he is a cold guy. So we may move him down to a 10. Both of them have a Z Rest, which I think, again, is a great starter sleeping pad. It's super durable. I'm not worried about them damaging it. They can play with it all they want. And then as they grow older, you can actually just cut off a couple sections and you got a seat pad, or you can keep it together and use it as an under pad for your air mattress. Both of them also have a Thermarest self-inflating sleeping pad. And then occasionally I'll let them use my actual air mattresses if they want. So my adults, if all you're ever going to do is car camping, get the thickest, fluffiest, most comfortable self-inflating sleeping pad that you can afford. Don't think twice about it. It will improve your backcountry sleeping. Grab a sleeping bag. The weight doesn't matter as much for you because you're car camping. So find one that you like the fit of, that you're not going to be squeezed too tight, and go ahead and get a synthetic one. Weight doesn't matter. Doesn't with your car camping. If your plans are to progress into backpacking, so you're going to move up with your scout into the troop and weight becomes a concern, adults still look at the synthetic, but also consider something like a down bag. Think about what style you want. As an adult, you have a better idea. Are you a back sleeper? Are you a side sleeper? Because if you're a back sleeper, a standard mummy is 100% the way to go. If you're a side sleeper, Looking at the Nemo spoon style or the Big Agnes Sidewinder is going to be super good. Go to the store, try those out. And if you're a backpacker, it's still reasonable to start off with a super comfy self-inflating mattress. Maybe not as thick as this Nemo pad down here, but still a good option. Look for a backpacking style one, or if you know that you're going to be into it and you know that weight's going to be a concern and you want the most comfortable sleep you've got, look at one of these inflatable pads, something like this Sea Summit or the Big Agnes one I showed you earlier. They're going to provide, in terms of bang for the ounce, not bang for the buck, the most comfortable, warmest experience you're going to have. Remember, anything backpacking can be used for car camping, not necessarily the other way around. So let's talk about a couple more things that will really maximize your ability to be comfortable in the woods. So maybe you noticed, maybe you didn't. I didn't mention pillows. So not everybody needs one. And for car camping, it's completely fine to just bring one from home. Toss it into your sleeping bag, and you're good. There are companies that make camping or backpacking pillows. So I really like this Sea Summit Aeros pillow. It's super comfy. It's about 4.5 inches thick, which works for me. It's designed to work with their sleeping pads, so it doesn't slide around. That is a detriment to a lot of these. Is that the nylon on these just slide right off the sleeping pad? This is designed to work with their sleeping pad. Another trick that I've used as a scout is I take the stuff sack my sleeping bag comes in and I stuff clothes in, or I take my clothes bag and I make a pillow out of that. Maybe put a t-shirt on top for comfort. That's a great option. I've been known to even put my head on my boots at night with some padding on it. Now, in terms of other things, I would highly recommend at least thinking about or picking up. So, other ways of increasing your sleeping bag's temperature, your comfort range, is a liner. They make lots of different types. This one's silk. They make ones that are almost like a fleece. They can add a lot of warmth to your sleeping bag. Doing something like boiling some water, putting it in a leak-proof bottle and throwing it in that sleeping bag right before, 30 minutes, an hour before you get in bed, letting it warm up ahead of you so you don't have to warm it up can be like life-changing. So something like a Nalgene bottle or a platypus or a Nalgene flexible canteen works great. Just make sure it's leak proof. Know that when you put boiling water in a lot of these, the expansion changes this. You need to snug it down after a few minutes to make sure that it's going to stay leak proof. And then the last tip I have for everybody who's going to sleep outside is, again, moisture is the enemy. So a fresh change of clothes that the only thing you're going to do is sleep in them is really important. I like to have a nice thick pair of socks. Lose a lot of heat through your feet. I like to have a nice fluffy bandana or beanie. You lose a lot of moisture out of your head, and sometimes it's hard to keep your head in that sleeping bag. It could, especially if you're a side or back sleeper. And then the last thing I like to do is put on, if it's really cold, some nice mid-weight long underwear. This is wool, synthetic is fine. You do want to avoid cotton. Cotton traps moisture, it doesn't allow it to evaporate, and that will decrease any sleep rating you have, make you very cold. And then the last tip I have, it's really for the morning, is if you toss your clothes you're going to change into the foot of the bag at some point in the morning before you get out, let them warm up a little bit. It's not as shocking getting out of bed. So let's go to REI's website and look and see what options are available. Maybe we'll point out a couple good options.
So I've selected REI's website. I'm just showing what's available in the local Pineville store. And there's three pretty good options, especially as a starter sleeping bag. So you've got the Co-op Trailmade 20, the Big Agnes Anthracite 20, and then the Nemo Forte 20. All of these are synthetic sleeping bags, and all of them are going to suit you really well. They all come in different sizes as well, and that's going to be really important to fit you. So what fits me, being over 6 feet, is not the same thing that's going to fit someone who is under 5'6". You're going to want to maximize your body's ability to warm that area in the sleeping bag by getting one that fits you well. These are all reasonable weights. You could use them car camping or backpacking, so 3.5 pounds or less. And then I will say that of the three, The
Now, if you
Nemo
know you're in
Disco
this
is
for
going
the
to
long
stand
run
out
and you're
if
looking
you're
at
a
the
side
sound bags,
sleeper
this is what the
or
local
if you
REI
are someone who
has
sleeps on their
right
belly or
now.
tosses
I
and
did
turns.
leave that Big Agnes Anthracite 20, the synthetic option, over to the right so you can kind of compare in terms of weight. These are all about 15 to 20 degree sleeping bags. And I've got the Nemo Disco on the left, which is down. And I've got the REI Magna 15, which is also down. Both of these have those different sizes. The REI actually has a lot more different sizes, so it can suit different body types. As you can see, there is a pretty decent drop in weight for similar to similar. So from that anthracite on the right to the REI Magma, you're dropping almost 10 ounces. What's that, 8.5? And then in terms of between that and the Disco, it's a similar weight, but you're getting all that extra room that the narrow taper Big Agnes Anthracite doesn't have. Kids sleeping bags, you may have a good opportunity if you've got a younger scout to look into these, save a little bit money compared to the big ones. But again, as your scout's older and growing, you know you're going to have to get them something bigger. So keep that in mind. So you've got the REI Kindercone 25 and the Big Agnes. The Kindercones go up to 60 inches, so 5 foot tall. The Big Agnes is 56 inches. These are all synthetics. They're going to be plenty durable, and they're not terribly heavy. So if your kid starts backpacking early or whatnot, you're going to be good. Now, if you know car camping is your jam and that's it, or you need a rectangular sleeping bag for other reasons, they do have two options in store right now. The Jazz 30, I can vouch this is going to be super comfortable. It's a good sleeping bag. I've basically got a 20-degree version of it. And then the Co-op Hunker Down 20, it's a rectangular bag. It's actually pretty lightweight, so you could use that for backpacking. Just know that these rectangular bags, you're going to have to physically be heating up more space, so you're not going to be as warm, especially at first. Sleeping pad wise, I think the smart money is in this Kelsey Minstrel. It's $40. It's a self-inflating sleeping pad, and we're car camping. Who cares about weight? It's got plenty of warmth, 4.7 R value. Now, if you know you're going to be backpacking or you're a side sleeper, looking at something else may be a good option, like the Big Agnes Boundary or the Rapid SL or that Nemo Tensor. The other thing that these more expensive sleeping pads offer that aren't available in the lower cost ones is you can get different sizes. So if you want a wide sleeping pad or you need a long sleeping pad, it's a better option. So if you know car camping is all you're going to want to do and you want to invest in the best sleep you can have possible, looking at this XPAD Megamat, that would be a great option. Online, they have the Nemo Roamer as well. If you want, the Hest is supposed to be amazing. I haven't slept on one, but people say really good things about it. However, it is open cell, so moisture could be a problem. Now, I left two other pads up here. Their Co-op Camp Dreamer and their XPAD Megamat Duo. These are two-person sleeping pads, and I absolutely do not recommend them because when one person rolls, it makes the other side bump up and down. So you're better off just getting two sleeping pads and putting them next to each other. Lastly, if you didn't find what you were really looking for in the store, know that REI has this incredibly deep catalog of other options. Now, there are other companies as well. I have dealt with Backcountry pretty substantially. They are good people. I would spend my money there as well. But just look through. So, we talked about some specific sleeping bags I have that maybe you're interested in that the store doesn't have. Talked about quilts. So this would be a quilt you could order. Now, I still think that a cottage manufacturer is going to be a better option for a quilt than getting it from here, but that's just me. If you're a side sleeper, this Sidewinder is awesome. There's a camp option, there's an ultralight option. You can go either way depending on if you want to go down the backpacking route or just the car camping route. I can't recommend these enough. They are fantastic. They're super comfortable for you side sleepers. And let's say you're interested, hey, that Big Agnes sleep system concept, this is an example of that. This is their Daisy May. You can really see how the pad takes the place of the bottom of the sleeping bag. Now, again, I do caution people with these. If you're someone who tosses and turns while grabbing hold of stuff, probably not a good idea. You'll end up on your belly with your sleeping pad on your back. If you were interested in just a more traditional Big Agnes bag, they've got the Torchlight. It's on sale as well currently. It's just your standard type of sleeping bag. And then, lots of different options. If you really liked that Big Agnes sleep system with the multiple different layers, it's called the Lost Ranger. They've got those on sale as well, and they're pretty cool. And I've got a version of this. It allows you to use that outer sleeping bag for warmer weather, inner sleeping bag for chilly, and then both together for super cold. It does save a decent amount of space in your gear closet because you've got one system for multiple solutions, but it can be kind of costly.
Once you've invested in your equipment, you do want to take really good care of it. So it's really important to allow, when you're done with your trip, your sleeping bags, let them lay open, let them air out any moisture, let it evaporate. And then you actually leave it in a big mesh stuff sack or laid out someplace to keep all these fibers that are keeping you warm from compressing. They are washable. It usually requires a commercial laundromat because of the agitator in most home washing machines, but it is something you can do, and you can make your sleeping bag last for decades by taking care of it. Sleeping pads, they're similar. The self-inflating pads need to be left open. So the idea is that the foam acts as a spring. If you keep that spring compressed, it's not going to spring up as much when you need it. So those are best left open. I shove them under a bed or behind a couch. And then the air mattress types, still let them kind of open up and air out for a bit, but then you can roll it back up and it's fine to be stored like this. Now, we've talked about a lot, and I have one more topic that I really want to touch on, and that's how to save money. So, I have 4 tips for you on how to save money on your camping gear. The first one is just plan ahead. If you know that you're going to be into backpacking, go ahead and get backpacking specific gear. You can use that for car camping just fine. Plan ahead in the sense that if you know that you're going to want to be more active in the spring and next fall, but maybe not this year, start looking for sales. You can save a lot of money at the end of seasons on equipment if you know what you're looking for and you know where to look. My second tip is join REI. It's, I think, $30 now. It's a lifetime membership, and you get 10% back on your purchases. You can also sign up for their credit card. I used my REI credit card 1 year for all my work related expenses. I bought a really nice tent with the dividend I got from that. They also have sales at specific times for members where they'll give you an additional 20% off coupon. They will open up their garage sale section to you earlier so you can buy gently used equipment. And they do a lot to support the local community. And then my last tip is become a leader. Scout leaders are extended by many companies the same discounts that would be provided to someone who works in an outdoor retailer store. So almost all of my equipment, except for my custom sleeping quilt and sleeping bag, but almost all of my equipment I've gotten at a substantial discount because I was a scout leader. So talk to your local pack, your local troop about volunteer opportunities. There are lots of ways you can contribute, even if you don't really think you know what you're doing. I guarantee you there's something that we can have you do. Or, like us, you can learn some of this stuff as we go. So that's it. If you guys have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them to the best of my ability. If you want to look at anything from my local guys of the stuff that I've got, I can bring it to one of our meetings. So until next time. Oh, and I'll have a blurb on tents coming up soon.
No roar!